Welcome to the video. Today we are deciding whether Chris Bumstead, 6-time classic physique Mr. Olympia champion, is going to step into his first pro open bodybuilding show at the Prague Pro and is going to win and punch his ticket for the Olympia 2025 as an open bodybuilder. Who knows if he's ever going to do another open show again, if this is just a fun thing. But that being said, I want to break down whether I think Chris Bumstead is going to beat number 4 open bodybuilder in the world, Martin Fitzwater, completely objectively as I can be. I love Chris. I think he's a tremendous bodybuilder. I do think that he is going to stack up well, but objectively speaking, this is a whole different ball game, classic versus open. And there's been so much back in the day of, you know, people saying, I can't remember who said it, but they were saying it's like weekend warriors are classic physique competitors, which is obviously just insane to say that it was an open bodybuilder. So if you know who it is, put it down in the comments. But I remember one open bodybuilder was saying, an Olympia champion was saying that classic physique competitors are weekend warriors, which is hilarious. But anyway, let's break it down pose for pose and see who is going to come out on top. The other interesting thing about this is, if you guys don't know enough about classic versus open, there are different poses that you hit in open that you do not hit in classic physique. So classic physique is front double, then we go right into our side chest, and then we go into back double, and then we've got abs and thighs in favorite classic. They do not hit front lat or back lat spread. They also do not hit a side tricep. So there's a lot of poses that actually Chris is not going to be hitting that he has to hit, which could be an advantage or disadvantage, probably a disadvantage in the case that he's not as practiced with them. But he's also really, really good in, I think would be really, really good in both the front and back lat spread. Even though it's not a mandatory, he hits it all the time, the front lat spread. So could be a really strong pose for him, but let's actually break it down and take it from the top, front double bicep. All right, so Chris doesn't hit a true front double in his routine, but I'm gonna go as close as I can. I'm gonna hit this kind of like favorite classic, which is slightly tilted versus Martin's straight on front double. And like right off the bat, what we can see is a disparity in the leg department. So Chris is a taller guy and he's 6'1.5", I believe, and weighs in about 238. So you've got a guy, Martin, who's I think about 5'6", 5'7", and just over 230, I believe, 230, 235. So you're only talking about 15 pounds different, but 6-7 inches shorter. So you have to understand how much more muscle is packed on Martin Fitzwater. And the good thing that Martin has for him is a really good taper. A lot of guys in open, they struggle with having that really, really nice taper, that X frame that Martin actually has in spades, and these really crazy sweeping quads. So when it comes to bodybuilding, size is one thing, but also insertions is extremely important. So when you are talking about hitting a front double and you see the quads, sure, you could taper, like two guys could have the same, if you measure it around, and if you have super high insertions and and your quads don't bow out like that, they don't have as much pop, where you call sweep, you're going to struggle to create that illusion of even a smaller waist or more pop or more X-frame to your physique. Martin's has crazy quad sweeps, probably some of the best in the IFBB, and I think that's gonna be a huge differentiator. The other thing is Martin's kind of been knocked in the past for not having the best arms. He's brought them up a ton to be not really a terrible body part for him. So his arms are actually pretty decent, and Chris admittedly, even himself says like arms are probably one of his worst body parts. So I think head to toe, considering Martin has a great taper as well, the only thing I think Chris will take away from this pose is the lats. Chris has tremendous flaring lats with pretty good insertions. So from the waist up, I think that Chris could maybe create a little bit more of that X-frame look. But I think just if we look at the whole pose, going from forearms, biceps, all the way through to midsection down to the sweeping quads, I think that this is just a clear win for Martin. I don't think that, quite frankly, Chris is going to stand a chance in terms of winning this pose. Let's go on to the front lat spread. Let's see where Martin hits this. This is one of Martin's worst poses now. So you've got one of Chris's best poses against one of Martin's worst. And this is a pose where height is actually going to help. Chris is very wide through the shoulders. And not to say that Martin is narrow, but because of the fact that Chris is so wide, it creates that illusion, that X-frame, and his legs probably in this shot are still gonna be a weakness as compared to Martin, even though his legs are still tremendous, but they're just not gonna have that pop, but it's going to be overwhelmed by the fact that Chris is just so superior in that X-frame department when it comes to the front lat spread. He's got those wide shoulders. He takes up more space on stage. So from a narrow perspective, I'm gonna give the front lat spread to Chris Bumstead. Now let's go to the side and see the Martian versus Chris in this side chest pose. Chris, one of the better, like one of probably the best side chest in Classic, versus Martin here. Oh God, this is so tough. Man, so Chris has the height, but Martin, when you turn to the side, is really where an open guy differentiates himself from a Classic guy, just because you have so much more thickness in those side poses. The side leg, I would say, is not terrible, like the discrepancy. Martin has them there because those crazy quad sweeps. Chris has nice quad sweeps. It's just pale in comparison just due to the overall musculature. And then the chest, I could give this to Martin. I would say Chris a little bit more conditioned, a little more separated, especially at the Olympia. But that being said, Martin is just so thick through the delts, through the arms, through the chest overall. He's hitting the pose really nice. And just from top to bottom, I just think that because he has that just fuller look, more density, it's a hard pose for me to give to Chris, even though I think it's one of his best. It's just, he's taller, it's more aesthetic, it's prettier to look at, but like from a bodybuilding, and that's what it is, it's just open bodybuilding, Martin takes this pose for me. So I don't think either of them hit a true side tricep in their posing routine. It's not one of Martin's better poses. It's not a terrible pose for him, but it's also not a tremendous pose for him. He hits it in the comparisons and Chris doesn't. I think triceps and biceps are not Chris's strong suit. And so if I'm gonna give the side chest to Martin, I'm gonna have to give the side tricep to Martin as well, just because he's got more density. His triceps, his arms are spectacular. He's brought them up a ton. So if I'm gonna give, it would be weird for me to give Martin the side chest and then Chris the side tricep. I just can't see where that would make any sense. So if I'm already gonna be there, I'm gonna give the side tricep to Martin. Now we're at 3-1. Back double, this is where it gets super duper interesting, guys. Oh man, this is a tough one. So I think I've kind of battled with this and gone a few different ways with where I think I would go with the back double. They both have tremendous development through the hamstrings, through the lower half. Chris is just dense and separated, and he's got those hamstrings that look like they're gonna jump out of the screen and like snag you. It's pretty insane. Now where I think Martin has an advantage is through that top line. We see just more density through the spinal erectors, through the mid back, through the upper back, through the traps, rear delts, arms. Chris and him would, I say, arguably have nice lats and nice lat insertions. But Martin, just from like just a density perspective, he's got one of those like crazy, like Phil Heath-esque backs where it's got that dense 3D look that kind of just bubbly and jumps out of the screen at you. So I think just for that reason, since they're pretty comparable lower body wise, which to even be hanging with Martin, who's 5 inches shorter than him, from the lower body, from the waist down, is insane. So now to say like it's even close, but then I think Martin really separates himself in that density in the upper body. I think back double is going to go to Martin on this one, and then let's go to the back lat spread. So back lat spread for me is going to be a very close call, but I think that this is a pose that Chris can win just because of the same argument I made for the front lat spread. He's got so much width, he takes up so much space on stage, he's got great flow, great X-frame. It's in a tremendous, it sucks that he can't hit this as a part of his classic physique mandatories in terms of the comparison rounds to go against somebody like Ramon, because he really, I think, would separate himself even more as like the true champ if he could hit that back lat spread. It would probably be insane. So I'm gonna actually give Chris that pose, which I think gives us 5-2, I believe. And then abs and thighs, while Martin has, again, the quads, the density, I think Chris has mastered this pose. He's got great abs, small waist, he can pull the vacuum, not to say that Martin can't, but Martin, he doesn't have the prettiest ab structure, and it's not because he doesn't train him well, it's not because he's bloated, it's just because just genetically, he's a shorter guy, shorter frame, and he doesn't have that beautiful structure to his abs. It just is what it is. He looks way better in a vacuum. So the abs and thighs, I think I'm just gonna give to Chris, even though he's out-muscled by Martin. From a bodybuilding perspective, I think with the abs, with the shot being called abs and thighs, Martin's gonna win in the thigh department, but I think the disparity is going to really show itself in the abs, where Chris is gonna come out and have better abs than abs and thigh. And then most muscular, this is gonna be a fun one to see, Martin versus Chris. But at the end of the day, I think that Chris is going to just get out-muscled. It's literally a most muscular. Martin, pound for pound, height by weight, is just like so much more muscle than Chris. It's just, I think it's going to be overwhelming in that pose. Plus he practices it all the time. It's one of the most important open bodybuilding poses. So I think that Martin's gonna get him there. And so I've got this one in not so close a call, which is crazy to say, going to Martin Fitzwater. I think he's one of the best bright talents in the open bodybuilding division. I think he's got immense potential beyond what he's already achieved at whatever he is, like 27, 28 years old. So I think this is gonna be just a very stark contrast. But if the biggest thing I think would have helped Chris, if he was going up against somebody that was very minimally aesthetic. Let's say you were going up against, I don't want to say like one of the open bodybuilders you wouldn't say is like the most aesthetic. I mean, Nick, you don't want to go up against Nick Walker. He's so heavily muscled. But maybe somebody along the lines of like James Hollingshead. Like, I think he's got a tremendous physique, but not somebody you would say like, oh, he's the most aesthetic guy in the open division. He's very dense, he's very muscled, he gets nice and conditioned, but I think it would be easier for Chris to go up against something like this where he could expose him on maybe not having the prettiest structure, but he could then win on the aesthetics. But Martin's also super aesthetic, great structure, wide shoulders, small waist, crazy sweeping quads, always very conditioned. And let's not forget, he is coached by one of the best up-and-coming coaches, Stefan Kinzel, boss of Outlaws, so you cannot discredit that as well. The season he's been having with his athletes is absolutely immense, and I think is a testament to how good of a coach he really is. I think he's cemented himself as a top 3 coach in the world. So one thing Chris could do is just take more HTLT supplements, right? Like, you know, he's obviously natty, so he could take some Turk Builder, and he's probably not even taking creatine right now. Let's be realistic. It's Chris Bumstead, he's natty. And then obviously, if he wants to get on stage, be rock hard, harder than last time. And if you really want to get jacked up, get some pre-workout like I'm on right now. But hope you guys love this analysis. Hope this was somewhat beneficial. I love bodybuilding, and even though I might not be competing anytime soon or ever again, who the fuck knows, I still love the support. And I do want to see myself in it in some capacity, whether it's commentating or coaching other athletes or whatever it is in the future. But hope you guys love this video. Always remember, use my code for Young LA, use my code for HTLT supplements. It supports me, supports the page, helps me continue to create videos for you guys and give you guys value. So hope you guys love it, and we'll see you guys on the next video.